So I'm on a bit of a roll with the Irish distillers in the last week or two. Let's keep it in the family again this week. Let's drink some whiskey. Welcome to Whiskey and Whiskey, and indeed Christy's Bar. I'm the Whiskey Chaser Brian, and after last week's video on the Redbreast limited edition, card above, I wanted to do something equally as special this week. Not that all the whiskeys I give my thoughts on aren't special in one way or another, but this is often referred to as the pinnacle of Irish whiskey. And it comes from Irish Distillers, which is the same home as Redbreast, Jameson, Powers, Green Spot. I think I said this before actually. This is Midleton Very Rare 2021 vintage release. Like I said at the start, this whiskey is special and in a number of different ways. This right here is what I call my eureka moment in whiskey. This is a true story. I had always dabbled in Irish whiskey, be it the normal stuff you would find in an optic at a bar and generally mixed with some form of non-alcoholic mixer. And it was actually a friend of mine one night that asked had I ever tried anything really top shelf, something really special. I confessed I hadn't that much experience with whiskey and had never really ventured outside of the standard pours. A glass of Midleton Very Rare was poured for me. Neat. And let's just say, wow. It changed my entire world. And since then, I've been fascinated with Irish whiskey and its many brands, distillate types, history. You get the idea. Now, I can't particularly remember the vintage I tried that night as things get a little bit blurry and I wouldn't have the best of memories anyway. This is not the first edition of this whiskey. For those that don't know, this is the 38th edition of the Midleton Very Rare series, which was first introduced by Barry Crockett back in 1984. A brief little history lesson coming up, kids. Barry Crockett was a second generation master distiller in Midleton that came up with the concept of the Midleton Very Rare series by utilizing some of the finest whiskeys Midleton produced and blending them to showcase the very best whiskey that Midleton had to offer. These are non-age statement premium blends of grain and pot still whiskeys produced each year in very limited quantities. The exact amount produced is generally unknown at somewhere in the region of less than 2,500 cases. The different age of whiskeys that are used in the Midleton Very Rare range from 12 to 30 plus years of age and are generally speaking handpicked by the master distiller. This is one of the most expensive whiskeys regularly produced by Irish distillers. Did I mention this was an Irish distiller's product? Yeah? Okay, good. In the mid-1970s, Irish distillers decided to close most of their distilleries and bring them all under one roof in a brand new state-of-the-art, purpose-built facility in Midleton, County Cork. These distilleries included John Jameson's Bow Street, John Power and Sons John's Lane, and Cork Distilleries Company, the old Midleton Distillery. Previous to that new distillery being built, the old Midleton Distillery was owned by Cork Distilleries Company and was opened in 1825 by the Murphy brothers, the same Murphy family that was involved in Murphy's Irish Stout. It's good stuff. Porter. Interestingly enough, before the Murphy brothers bought the distillery from Lord Midleton for £4,000 sterling, it was a woolen mills and also an army barracks during the Napoleonic Wars. The Murphy brothers invested heavily into the new distillery as a result of the Excise Act of 1823, which really freed up a lot of distilleries and allowed them to expand heavily. There was a large timber water wheel installed, which was replaced by a steel water wheel in 1852 and is still there to this day in magnificent shape. The old Midleton Distillery also houses the largest pot still ever built, which comes in at 31,618 gallons. It was so big that the distillery actually had to be built around it. It's still there to this day and can be seen in the old still room. And its smaller brother can be seen outside of the visitor center, which is still bloody huge when you see it. I'll do my thing and put a pic up there. In 1886, when Alfred Barnard visited, the output of the distillery was said to be at 1 million gallons per annum. That's a serious amount of hooch. Production at the old Midleton Distillery ceased on a Friday in July 1975, and the following Monday, production began in the new Midleton Distillery, which is only a few hundred yards away. The old Midleton Distillery was converted into a visitor centre in 1992 and is now referred to as the Jameson Experience, and the old distillery is in immaculate shape and it's absolutely gorgeous. I'll put a few photos up. So the new Midleton Distillery, opened in 1975, is the largest distillery in Ireland and quite possibly the world, with 3 of the largest pot stills in the world running at 75,000 litres and 3 column stills. Current annual production yields roughly in the area of 64 million litres per annum. I don't know why I'm talking like that, but that's an incredible amount of hooch. That's a lot of info so far. Hang tight, we're nearly there. I did mention that the first of these was produced back in 1984, and as the new distillery was only roughly 10 years old, they used to use a ton of whiskey from the old Midleton Distillery. Nowadays, all the whiskey in these blends are used from the new Midleton Distillery, which I found out recently holds approximately 1.81 million casks in storage. This is, like the others, a limited edition release whiskey and a collector's dream in terms of rarity. Some of these bottles go for an incredible amount of money on the auctions. In a previous auction only last week, a bottle of the 1988 Midleton Very Rare went for, brace yourselves, €30,400. That's mental. So it's nice to see these being open and drank, and yeah, this one is open and here waiting for the lockdown to end so you can all come down and give it a try. Since the start of the Midleton Very Rare series, there has been 3 master distillers in charge. Barry Crockett, who in 2013 retired after 47 years at the distillery. Then his successor, Brian Nation, who moved on to an American distillery in 2020, and most recently appointed head distiller Kevin O'Gorman is now firmly at the helm. Kevin O'Gorman actually began working in Midleton in 1998 alongside Barry Crockett and was the head of the wood management program down in the distillery. And to the best of my knowledge, he still is head of that program, along with carrying the master distiller role. So I suppose another reason why this is so special, as it's Kevin O'Gorman's first blending of Midleton Very Rare as master distiller and his first release adoring his signature on the bottle. Nice work. Okay, so it's time to get into the whiskey. I've given enough info on everything there, and if you'd like to find out more, I will of course leave a few links down below in the description box, as I always do, for you to check out in your own time. And before we do that, if you liked any of that information I gave on the whiskies and history of Midleton, shoot us a thumbs up, and if you haven't already, you might subscribe and click the little bell thing, because I like to talk to a camera, and to know you like listening, a thumbs up or a subscribe inspires the shit out of me. This is the moment we've all been waiting for. When I say we, I mean basically I, because there's no one here, but let's get this in the glass and have a little chat and a little taste about it. Glug, 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 glug. So the Midleton Very Rare 2021 is a non-age statement blended whiskey using old grain and pot still whiskies that were matured in American oak only. And from my research, there is a slightly heavier grain component in this year's release, as Kevin O'Gorman wanted to make this a lovely, delicate and elegant whiskey. This release uses whiskies aged between 15 to 36 years of age. The 36-year-old component is said to be a nod of the cap from Kevin O'Gorman to the first edition brought about by Barry Crockett in 1984. And that, my friends, is a nice little touch, if you ask me. This was released in late February of 2021 and sold out very quickly, but from my research, there will be another release of this late autumn because of the COVID restrictions and the on-trade hopefully being opened back up by then. So if you didn't get a bottle, hold tight, more coming. This is a 40% ABV blended whiskey using both first and second fill ex-bourbon American oak barrels, and generally speaking, this retails in and around the 180, 185 euro bracket. And a funny little side note, actually, for the longest time, I actually thought these releases were a vatting of different pot still distillates, not actually a blend of grain and pot still. Idiot. So yeah, on the nose, very delicate and very elegant is the first thing that I would come across and say. It's kind of light. You know, it has that honey vibe to it, a little bit of milk chocolate, very slight hint of tropical fruits, like definitely kind of a ripe banana would stick out the most for me. Very light spice, not actually that much spice. It's kind of, you know, in line with everything. Nothing sticks out too much. Everything is kind of well placed along the nose spectrum, or the nasal spectrum, if you want to call it something stupid like that. I'm getting a little bit of char from the oak barrels. A nice hint of that at the end. Yeah, as I said, kind of, you know, it's that light kind of lightness to it. A little bit of caramel, maybe touch of like a kind of salted caramel note to it. Let's have a little drink. Sláinte. It's quite light, but oily, kind of creamy, if that makes a little bit of sense. Plenty of vanilla in it, of course. Baked apples stands out. A little bit of butterscotch. Kind of a toffee note. Very subtle and enjoyable spice. It's not overpowering in any sense of the word. Lovely hint of honey. Again, as was the nose on the palate, nicely balanced. It all kind of goes in harmony. I liked it. The finish, you know, it's light, it's fruity with a small bit of heat. It's kind of fading. It's leaving a lovely woody note that's like not overpowering, which just sits right in harmony with everything else. It's very good. It's very light. I did say it was very well balanced, and that's right across the entire spectrum: nose, palate, finish. Yeah, I mean, all right, so look, there you have it, the Midleton Very Rare 2021, the first blend from master distiller Kevin O'Gorman. And to be honest, it's everything you come to expect from Midleton Very Rare. Nicely balanced, delicate, light and oily, flavors that actually complement each other. And this is exactly why they refer to it as the pinnacle of Irish whiskey. I mean, to be honest, I never thought for one second that this wasn't going to be anything but good. I think that for someone who likes a nice robust whiskey, it might be nice to try this sort of blend, as to see the way everything gels so well together. If you like a delicate whiskey, you'll love this, as it ticks all of the boxes. Generally speaking, I personally fall into the more robust whiskey category when drinking, but you know, I found this to be quite pleasant to drink, as it has a lot of lovely subtle nuances to it. It's great to see people opening these, as you know, that's what they're really for, but you can also see the collectability aspect also. And some of the prices that these bottles get on the secondary is absolutely bananas. For example, a few years ago, you could probably put a full set of this together for in or around the 35,000 euro mark. And just in a recent auction, the 1988 went for 30,400 euros, as I already mentioned, obviously. And that's before auction fees and taxes. Wow. And that's just for one bottle. It's hard to fathom actually, but it just goes to show what direction the Irish whiskey market is heading in. So thanks to the lads here at Christy's for supplying the sample to me so I can get this video out to you. As always, I'll leave a link to their socials in the description under this video. And the majority of these whiskeys that I try are, of course, on sale here in the bar and waiting for you once everything opens back up. Whenever that may be, we'll be here. Right, I'm off to decide what whiskey I'm going to do for next week's video. If you have any suggestions for what you'd like to see me drinking, maybe leave a little comment below and I'll do my best to get to them in the next few weeks. Thanks very much for tuning in, and of course, I'll chat to you all next week. Whiskey Chaser out. Sláinte.